At my daughter's birthday party, where everything was supposed to be a perfect celebration of family warmth, my grandson whispered in panic, "Grandpa, get out of here, now!" I was stunned, my heart pounding with shock. "Why?" I asked. "Just go, please!" I trusted him, and it saved me. It turns out, my daughter was planning something horrific. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The front door slammed against the wall so hard the coffee mug in my hand nearly slipped. $15,000, Dad. I need it tonight. I didn't turn around from the kitchen sink, kept washing the dinner plate with deliberate strokes, letting the warm water run over my weathered hands. 40 years of these surprise visits had taught me patience. For what exactly? My 40th birthday party tomorrow. Laura's heels clicked across the linoleum as she paced behind me. "This is my moment, Dad. Everyone will be there. My colleagues, Xavier's business partners, the neighbors from Oak Ridge Drive." The designer handbag hit the kitchen table with a soft thud. I finally turned around, dish towel still in my hands. My daughter stood there in her expensive coat, mascara slightly smudged around the edges. The fluorescent light above made her look older than 40. "Laura, you're 40 years old. Time to learn to live within your means." Her laugh came out sharp and bitter. "You're a greedy old man. I have a husband, children, a reputation to maintain." She gestured wildly, her wedding ring catching the light. "Do you know what people will say if I can't throw a proper party?" I placed my coffee cup down on the counter with careful control. The ceramic made a soft click against the formica. "Status doesn't pay bills. Your manager's salary is perfectly adequate for any reasonable celebration." "Reasonable?" Laura's voice climbed higher. She began circling the small kitchen like a caged animal. "You live in this tiny house, drive that ancient Honda, wear clothes from discount stores. You're sitting on thousands and thousands of dollars while your only daughter struggles." The accusation hung in the air between us. I remained seated at my small kitchen table, watching her pace. The family photos on the refrigerator seemed to mock us. Happier times when money hadn't poisoned every conversation. "I remember the diamond earrings," I said quietly. 2 years ago, 3,000 for car repairs, you said." Laura froze mid-step. "That was different. The business investment last year, 8,000 for a sure thing." I folded the dish towel with precise movements. "Found out it went to a shopping spree at Nordstrom." "Dad, please!" "The educational trip with Theo, 2,000 for museums and learning experiences." My voice stayed level, but something cold crept into it. "Turned out to be spa treatments at a luxury resort." Laura's face flushed red. She slammed her fist down on the table so hard the salt and pepper shakers jumped. "I'm your only daughter. You owe me this." I stood slowly, my back protesting the sudden movement. The kitchen felt smaller with both of us standing. I pointed toward the front door, my arm steady despite my age. "I owe you nothing. The exit is right there." For a moment, she stared at me with something between shock and fury. Then she grabbed her handbag and stormed out. The front door slammed again, rattling the windows. Through the kitchen curtain, I watched her BMW reverse aggressively out of my driveway. The kitchen felt smaller somehow. The living room felt different at night. I turned off the kitchen light and walked slowly to my leather recliner, the one that had molded to my body over 15 years. The evening news played softly on the television, but I reached for the remote and muted it. Tonight, I needed silence to think. The whiskey bottle sat on the side table where Eleanor had always kept her reading glasses. Irish whiskey, her favorite, though she'd only allowed herself a small glass on special occasions. I poured 2 fingers into the crystal tumbler, the liquid catching the light from the single table lamp. Had I been too harsh? The question nagged at me as I settled into the familiar embrace of worn leather. Outside, streetlights were beginning to glow in the April darkness. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked twice and fell silent. I removed my reading glasses and rubbed the bridge of my nose. The house creaked around me, settling into evening quiet. But my mind wouldn't settle. It kept circling back to other nights, other confrontations, other times I'd said yes when I should have said no. The diamond earrings incident played out in my memory like a worn movie reel. Laura had called crying about car trouble, her voice shaking with what sounded like genuine distress. "Dad, the mechanic says it'll be 3,000 minimum. I can't get to work without my car." I'd driven to the bank that same afternoon, written the check without question because that's what fathers do. But 2 weeks later, Theo had mentioned seeing his mother wearing sparkly new earrings that caught the light like stars. When I'd asked Laura about them, she'd changed the subject. The whiskey burned slightly going down, but it was a familiar burn. Eleanor had bought this bottle the Christmas before she died. For special occasions, she'd said, though we'd never found an occasion special enough. Now, I drank it alone, talking to her photograph on the mantel. Eleanor always said I spoiled her too much, I murmured to the empty room. The photo showed Eleanor in her blue dress, the one she'd worn to Laura's high school graduation. You'd whisper on those late nights when Laura called crying about money again. Wilford, you're not helping her by fixing everything. But what father wants to see his daughter struggle? The business investment scam had been worse. $8,000 for what Laura called a sure thing opportunity with one of Xavier's contacts. She'd shown me paperwork, talked about projected returns, even brought Theo along to make it seem more legitimate. Think about Theo's college fund, Dad. This could really help secure his future. But there had never been any investment. Xavier had encouraged the spending spree at Nordstrom, telling Laura she deserved nice things after all her hard work. When I'd confronted them both, Xavier had shrugged and said business was business. Laura had cried and promised to pay it back. That was 8 months ago. The vacation overspend had been the final straw. $2,000 for an educational trip with Theo to Washington, D.C. Museums, monuments, history lessons. Theo had been so excited when he'd called to thank me. But when he'd mentioned the hotel spa and the fancy restaurants where they brought us 7 different courses, I'd known the truth. I shifted in my chair, and the leather creaked its familiar protest. The ice cubes in my whiskey had melted down to slivers. On the television, a weatherman pointed at maps showing clear skies for tomorrow. A normal Friday. Errands to run, groceries to buy, prescriptions to fill. At 9:23 p.m., I checked my phone. No messages, no apology text from Laura, though I hadn't really expected one. She'd be home now, probably telling Xavier about my unreasonable behavior, planning her party with whatever money they could scrape together. I set my alarm for 7 a.m. and finished the whiskey. Time for bed, time to let this day end. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight's decision felt solid. Eleanor would have approved. Walking to the kitchen to rinse my glass, I looked out the window at my Honda sitting in the driveway. Reliable, practical, paid for. Everything Laura thought was wrong with my life, but it would get me where I needed to go tomorrow, just like it had for the past 12 years. The kitchen light clicked off, leaving the house in comfortable darkness. The morning coffee steamed in my travel mug as I stepped onto the front porch. 7:15 a.m., and the April air held that crisp promise of spring. I'd slept better than expected, waking naturally at 7 without the alarm. Toast and jam for breakfast, a quick check of the weather forecast, and now errands beckoned. My grocery list sat folded in my shirt pocket. Milk, bread, those whole grain cereals the doctor recommended. The pharmacy pickup would be quick, just my blood pressure medication. Maybe I'd stop at the hardware store afterward, pick up those light bulbs for the basement. Keys jingled in my hand as I walked down the concrete steps. The Honda sat in its usual spot, a faithful blue companion that had never let me down. But something looked wrong. The car sat lower than normal, tilted at an odd angle that made my stomach clench. I walked around the front of the car, my footsteps echoing in the quiet suburban morning. The front passenger tire was completely flat, the rubber spreading like a deflated balloon against the driveway. Confusion hit first, not alarm. Tires went flat sometimes. Age, wear, bad luck. But the front driver's tire was flat too. My pulse quickened as I continued around the car counterclockwise. The rear passenger tire, flat. The rear driver's tire, flat as well. All 4 tires, sitting deflated in the morning light like some kind of mechanical accident. Except, this was no accident. I crouched beside the front tire, my knees protesting the position. There, clean and precise, was a puncture hole in the sidewall. Not a nail or road debris. This cut looked deliberate, made with something sharp and thin. Professional. One by one, I checked the other tires. 4 identical punctures, each placed exactly where it would cause maximum damage. The ice that formed in my stomach had nothing to do with the morning temperature. I sat heavily on my front porch steps, the concrete cold through my khakis. Around me, the neighborhood was waking up. Mrs. Chen walked her elderly beagle past my driveway, giving me a curious wave. A lawnmower started up somewhere on Maple Street. The garbage truck rumbled in the distance. Friday pickup day. Normal life continuing while my world tilted sideways. My phone felt heavy in my hand as I scrolled to Laura's number. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Dad, what's wrong? It's so early." "Laura, when you left yesterday evening, did you notice anything unusual about my car tires?" A pause. Then defensiveness crept into her voice. "No, Dad. What happened?" "All 4 tires have been punctured." Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted to artificial concern. "Oh no, that's terrible. Probably those little troublemakers from Maple Street. You know how kids these days have access to all sorts of tools. You should call their parents. The punctures look professional. Dad, you're being paranoid." Her voice carried that dismissive tone I'd heard countless times when she wanted to end a conversation. Kids these days watch YouTube videos about everything. They probably learned it online. You're always expecting the worst in people. I held the phone away from my ear for a moment, staring at my disabled car. The morning breeze carried the scent of someone's bacon breakfast and the distant sound of children walking to school. Normal Friday sounds for everyone, except me. "Maybe you're right," I said finally, though something cold had settled in my chest. "Of course I'm right. Just call LAA and get it fixed. These things happen, Dad. Don't let it ruin your whole day." After she hung up, I sat on the porch steps for another few minutes. The sun climbed higher, warming my face but not reaching the chill inside. Mrs. Chen had disappeared around the corner. The lawnmower had moved to a different yard, life moving forward while mine stood still. I called LAA from the porch, giving them my address and membership number. 2-hour wait for the tow truck, they said. Friday morning was busy. I'd need to buy 4 new tires, probably run close to $600. Walking back into the house to change into more comfortable shoes, I tried to focus on the day ahead. Errands would have to wait. The grocery list could be shortened to items within walking distance. The pharmacy was only 6 blocks away. But as I laced up my walking shoes, my mind wasn't on errands anymore. The morning had changed everything. 6 hours of walking had left my feet sore and my back aching. The grocery bags felt heavier than usual as I climbed my front steps, keys dangling from my pinky finger. Milk, bread, prescriptions picked up, even managed the bank deposit. All accomplished on foot through sheer stubbornness. Inside the kitchen, I began unpacking methodically. Refrigerated items first, milk in the door, yogurt on the top shelf, lunch meat in the deli drawer. Each action deliberate, controlled, a way to restore order after the morning's chaos. The new tires sat in my driveway now, 4 black circles that had cost me $637. My phone rang just as I placed the milk carton in its designated spot. I hesitated, checking the caller ID. Laura, again. My finger hovered over the answer button for 3 rings before I finally pressed it. "Hi, Dad. How was your day?" The question caught me off guard. Casual, almost cheerful. Too cheerful for someone whose father had just dealt with vandalized property. I sat down at the kitchen table, reaching for a pen from the drawer. Eventful. Had to walk everywhere. "Oh, right, the tire situation. Did you get that sorted out?" Her tone carried that artificial concern again, the same false note I'd heard this morning. She knew exactly what had happened to my tires, but she was fishing for details about my reaction. 4 new tires, $600, a brief silence, then, "Dad, I want to invite you to my birthday party tomorrow." I stopped unpacking, the bread loaf suspended in my hand. "I thought you needed $15,000 for that party." Zav helped out. He got a bonus at work. The words came too quickly, too rehearsed. A client deal he closed last month. The commission finally came through. I wrote bonus, commission on the back of my grocery receipt, then circled it. Real estate commissions didn't work that way. They came through within 30 days of closing, not months later. That was fast. Yesterday he couldn't afford it. We talked after our conversation. He realized family comes first. Laura's voice took on that manipulative sweetness I remembered from her teenage years. "This party means everything to me, Dad. It's my 40th birthday." Through the kitchen window, I watched Mrs. Chen's cat pick its way across my yard. Normal afternoon life continuing while my daughter spun, lies with practiced ease. And where exactly did this money come from? I told you, his commission check. The Riverside Development Project. Her voice climbed slightly, the way it always did when she was improvising. You know how these big commercial deals work. I didn't know any Riverside Development Project, and neither did she. But I wrote down the details anyway, creating a record of her fabrications. What time tomorrow? 7 o'clock, and Dad... Her voice softened, became almost vulnerable. I'm sorry about yesterday. I was stressed about money, about the party, about disappointing everyone. I said things I didn't mean. The apology sounded genuine, tugged at the part of me that still remembered teaching her to ride a bicycle, still saw her as my little girl. But the timing was too convenient, the shift too dramatic. We all say things we don't mean when we're upset. So you'll come? It would mean everything to me. I know we've had our differences about money, but you're still my father. I need you there. I drummed my fingers on the table, thinking about Eleanor's voice, whispering warnings about enabling behavior. But I also thought about family, about second chances, about the possibility that I'd been too harsh. I'll be there. Oh, Dad, thank you. 7 o'clock at our house. And dress nice. It's going to be elegant. After she hung up, I sat at the table holding the pen, staring at my notes. Bonus, commission, Riverside Development. All lies, but carefully constructed ones. Laura had learned to weave deception with threads of plausibility. I folded the receipt carefully and placed it in my wallet next to my driver's license. Then I walked to the refrigerator and looked at the calendar magneted to the door. Laura's birthday, written in my own handwriting from 3 weeks ago, when I'd still been planning to celebrate normally. My finger touched the calendar entry, but I didn't erase it. Tomorrow would bring answers to questions I wasn't sure I wanted to ask. Saturday evening brought unexpected nerves as I knotted my tie in the bathroom mirror. The navy suit felt foreign after months of casual clothes, but Laura had specified elegant. I'd even bought a gift that morning, a silver picture frame for family photos, wrapped in cream-colored paper with a blue ribbon. The taxi dropped me at Laura's house exactly at 7. What I saw made me stop on the sidewalk, gift box heavy in my hands. This wasn't a birthday party. This was a production. White tablecloths covered rented tables scattered across the backyard. String lights hung between oak trees like captured starlight. A professional sound system played jazz music that probably cost more per hour than most people made in a day. Ice sculptures, actual ice sculptures, gleamed under portable spotlights. At the open bar, a bartender in black vest and bow tie mixed drinks from bottles I recognized as top-shelf liquor, the kind Laura couldn't normally afford with a full paycheck, let alone after begging me for $15,000 2 days ago. I walked through the gate, my dress shoes sinking slightly into the perfectly manicured grass. Guests in expensive clothes clustered around high tables, their conversations punctuated by laughter that carried easily in the warm April air. Everyone looked impressed by the elaborate setup. Dad! Laura appeared beside me in a designer dress I'd never seen before, all flowing fabric and strategic sequins. You made it! You look so handsome! She kissed my cheek and immediately guided me toward the bar, her hand firm on my elbow. The gesture felt controlling rather than welcoming. This is quite a setup, I said, mentally calculating costs. The ice sculptures alone were $500 minimum. The catered food from what looked like an upscale restaurant had to be another 1,000. Add the live jazz trio, the valet service I'd noticed at the front, the professional lighting. Zav really came through, Laura said, waving toward her husband who was holding court near the main table. That commission was bigger than we expected. I watched Zav telling an animated story to a small crowd, his gestures broad and confident. But there was something nervous in his energy, and he kept glancing toward the house. Specifically, toward the upstairs windows. Let me get you a drink, Dad. What'll you have? The bartender makes an amazing Manhattan. Before I could answer, she was ordering for me. The bartender, who seemed to know exactly what to pour, handed me a crystal glass filled with amber liquid. Too much amber liquid. This wasn't a social drink. This was designed to get me drunk quickly. Quite the party, I said to the bartender, testing a theory. Yes, sir. Mrs. Tremaine was very specific about keeping track of everyone's consumption. He smiled professionally, but his words confirmed my suspicion. A cold realization settled in my chest. They weren't just hosting a party. They were executing a plan. I took a small sip of the Manhattan, excellently made, probably $50 worth of liquor, and began scanning the crowd with new eyes. Laura's co-workers clustered near the food table, looking slightly overwhelmed by the luxury. Neighbors from the street wandered between tables, clearly impressed but puzzled by the extravagance. And then there were the strangers, well-dressed people who didn't seem to know anyone, who watched me with polite interest when they thought I wasn't looking. "Grandpa?" Theo appeared at my elbow, formal in a suit that looked uncomfortably tight around his growing frame. His usually bright expression was shadowed, troubled. "Hello, Theo. Quite a party your mother threw." He glanced around nervously, then moved closer. "Grandpa, leave, right now." The urgency in his whisper made my blood run cold. "What? Why, Theo?" "Just trust me. Go home, please." His young voice carried a desperation I'd never heard before. I tried to read his face, but before I could respond, Laura materialized beside us. "What are you two whispering about?" Her smile was bright as camera flash, but her eyes were sharp, watchful. "Just asking Grandpa about his car situation," Theo said quickly. "Dad, come meet the Hendersons from down the street." Laura's hand found my elbow again, steering me away from my grandson before I could ask him what he meant. As she led me across the yard, I caught a glimpse of Theo's face. He looked terrified, and for the first time since arriving, so was I. By 10:30, my untouched Manhattan had been replaced twice. Laura and Zav took turns checking on me, their attention becoming increasingly obvious as other guests began leaving. Each time I moved toward the gate, one of them appeared with urgent small talk about the weather, the food, anything to keep me anchored to the party. When I finally stood up from the main table, announcing I was tired and ready to go home, they rushed over together. "Dad, where are you going? We haven't cut the cake yet." Laura positioned herself directly in my path to the gate. Zav flanked me on the other side. "Come on, Wilford, the night is young. One more drink won't hurt." Their positioning was deliberate, coordinated. I was being blocked from leaving my own daughter's birthday party. "I'm tired. It's been a long day." "But it's my birthday!" Laura grabbed my arm with both hands. "You can't leave yet. This is family time." The desperation in her voice was naked now. All pretense dropped. Whatever they had planned required me to stay, and that plan was running out of time. I pretended to consider her plea while watching for an opportunity. Other guests were saying their goodbyes, requiring host duties that might distract my captors. When the elderly Hendersons approached to thank Laura for a lovely evening, both she and Zav were forced to turn their attention to gracious farewells. I slipped away during their hosting performance, walking quickly but calmly to the front yard. My phone was already opening the taxi app as I moved away from the house. 3 minutes, the app promised. Late evening meant less traffic. The taxi pulled up just as I heard the front door slam behind me. In the rearview mirror, I saw Laura rushing down her front steps, realizing I'd escaped whatever trap she'd set. We were several blocks away before I felt safe enough to make the call I dreaded. "Theo, are you safe to talk?" "Grandpa?" His voice came in a whisper. "Did you leave?" "Yes, I'm in a taxi." "What was that about?" The pause stretched long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then, "They wanted to get you drunk and steal your business." The words hit me like physical blows. "What do you mean, steal?" "There were lawyers upstairs with papers. Mom said once you drank enough, they'd make you sign everything over to them." Theo's voice was barely audible, but each word was clear. "They've been planning this since your fight." I stared out the taxi window at familiar streets that suddenly felt foreign. "Papers for what exactly?" "Transferring your real estate company to Mom and Dad. I heard them talking about it yesterday after you left. Dad owes money to bad people, and they thought if they got you drunk enough..." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. The punctured tires to make me dependent. The elaborate party to impress me with their supposed success. The constant drink refills, the bartender tracking my consumption. All of it designed to lower my guard and my judgment. "How long have you known about this?" "Since yesterday. I couldn't sleep thinking about it." His voice cracked slightly. "I was scared they'd punish me if I told you, but I couldn't let them hurt you." Through the taxi window, my house came into view. Small, practical, paid for. Everything Laura thought was wrong with my life, and everything they'd planned to steal. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I was scared they'd punish me, but I couldn't let them hurt you." The taxi pulled into my driveway, headlights illuminating the Honda with its 4 new tires. $637 that might have been just the beginning of what they'd planned to take. "Theo, listen to me carefully. I won't tell them you warned me, okay? You're safe. I love you, Grandpa. I love you too, son, more than you know. After hanging up, I sat in the taxi for a moment longer, staring at my house. It looked smaller than before, more vulnerable, but it was still mine, for now. The taxi pulled away, leaving me standing in my driveway in formal clothes that felt like a costume from someone else's life. 11:45 on a Saturday night, and Margaret Chen's porch light was still on next door. She sat in her wicker chair with a steaming mug, wrapped in her blue robe. "Hi, Will. You're home late. How was the party?" Her voice carried across the 30 feet between our houses, with that neighborly concern I'd always appreciated. Tonight, any distraction from the darkness in my head felt like a lifeline. "Long evening." I managed what felt like a normal smile and walked toward her porch. "How are you doing, Margaret?" "Fine, dear. When are you planning to change those tires?" The question hit me like cold water. I stopped at the edge of her walkway, car keys still in my hand. "Tomorrow I'll call the tow truck. How did you know about them?" Margaret shifted in her chair, setting her teacup on the porch railing. Something hesitant crossed her face. "Well, I saw what happened Thursday evening." My heart started racing, but I kept my voice carefully casual. "Oh? What did you see?" "I was sitting here after dinner when Laura came storming out of your house." Margaret's words came slowly, like she was testing each one. She was clearly upset, went to her car, then, well, she took something sharp and punctured all 4 of your tires. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place with sickening clarity. Theo's warning, the elaborate party trap, the lawyers upstairs, and now confirmation that my own daughter had sabotaged my car to make me dependent, vulnerable. "You saw her puncture them?" "Clear as day. I thought maybe it was some kind of family joke or message." Margaret looked puzzled, almost apologetic. "You know how families have their own ways of communicating." I forced a laugh that sounded remarkably genuine, even to my own ears. "Oh, that's Laura's way of telling me I need new tires anyway." Margaret's eyebrows rose. "That's an unusual way to make a point." She's always been creative with her suggestions. The lie rolled off my tongue with disturbing ease. Inside, rage burned like acid, but my face showed only mild amusement. "You know how daughters can be." "Well, if you say so. I was worried I should have said something sooner." She picked up her tea again, still looking uncertain. "It just seemed so deliberate." "I appreciate you telling me now." The words came out warmer than I felt. Margaret was a good neighbor, honest and observant. She deserved better than lies, but the truth would only complicate things. "Don't worry about it." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the spring night air carrying the scent of blooming cherry trees. Normal suburban peace, while my world crumbled and rebuilt itself into something harder. "Well, I should let you get some rest." I stood up, checking my watch. "Thank you for letting me know about the tires." As I walked toward my front door, Margaret called out softly, "Will, if there's anything, if you need anything." I turned back, giving her a smile that was perhaps the most genuine expression I'd managed all evening. "I'm fine, Margaret. Thank you." My hand found the front door handle, and I took a deep breath before turning the key. Monday would change everything. Sleep never came. I changed out of the formal clothes, hanging the suit carefully in my closet like armor I might need again. The house felt different in the pre-dawn darkness. Not a home, but a fortress under siege. By 12:30, I sat in my home office with the door closed. The oak desk that Eleanor had given me for our 20th anniversary held the weight of 40 years in business. Tonight, it would hold the blueprints for justice. The breakdown lasted exactly 10 minutes. I allowed myself that much, sitting in my leather chair, staring at the family photos that lined the walls, feeling the full weight of betrayal settle into my bones. The wedding picture with Eleanor seemed to mock me. 2 young people who believed in family loyalty, in doing right by your children. "Protect what you built, Will." Eleanor's voice, remembered or imagined, whispered from the photograph. "Don't let them destroy everything we worked for." I took out a legal pad and wrote "facts" at the top in capital letters. The chronology spilled out in neat handwriting. Money demand, tire sabotage, party trap, legal documents upstairs. Each item a calculated step in a conspiracy that had been planned for days, maybe weeks. Only Theo remained untainted. My grandson had risked his parents' anger to save me. That loyalty would be protected, even as I destroyed everything else. The safe behind my bookshelf opened with a click that sounded like a starting gun. Business contracts, corporate documents, decades of careful record keeping. I'd built this company from nothing, and I knew every financial thread that held it together, including the threads that connected to Xavier Tremaine. His project history with my company spread across the desk like evidence at a crime scene. 3 major developments in the past 2 years, each one showing irregularities that I'd overlooked because he was family. Bank routing numbers that didn't match invoices. Completion dates that shifted without explanation. Client payments that took unusual detours. Eleanor would have spotted these inconsistencies immediately. She'd always been better with numbers, better at seeing patterns. But I'd been blinded by family loyalty, by the desire to help my daughter's husband succeed. They wanted to steal everything, I said aloud to the empty office. Now they'll lose everything. The strategy crystallized as I worked through the documents. Phase 1. Destroy Zov's business relationships and reputation. Phase 2. Target Laura's employment and social standing. Phase 3. Legal protection of my own assets. I'd spent 40 years learning how to build. Now I'd learn how to tear down. Bank statements showed irregular deposits into Zav's personal accounts. Email records revealed investment requests that never matched project needs. Insurance claims for materials that were never delivered. Client complaints filed but mysteriously resolved without documentation. By 2 a.m., I had enough evidence to bury 3 careers. The laptop screen glowed as I opened my email program to send a message to Linda, my office secretary. She'd been with the company for 15 years. She'd helped me retrieve the archive files I needed. The clock on my desk showed exactly 2 a.m. as I closed the safe and put on my reading glasses. My reflection in the computer screen looked older, harder. A stranger wearing my face. Monday would begin the reckoning. Linda had my coffee ready when I arrived at the office Monday morning, along with the archive project files I'd requested via email. 27 years as a secretary had taught her when not to ask questions. "These are very old files, Mr. Grayson. Is everything all right?" "Just double-checking some investment details for tax purposes." The lie came easily now. "Nothing urgent. Should I make copies of everything?" "Just these specific documents." I handed her a list I'd prepared at home. "And Linda, this stays between us." She nodded with the discretion that made her invaluable. Within an hour, I had photocopies of 3 specific projects that told a story of systematic fraud. The Riverside development that never existed, the Oakwood Commercial Center with inflated material costs, and the Westside residential complex where client payments had been redirected to personal accounts. Xavier had been sloppy, confident that family connections would protect him from scrutiny, but family connections worked both ways. The drive across Chicago took me to 3 different postal zones, each chosen for maximum anonymity. First stop, a UPS store in Lincoln Park, where I mailed a package to Harrison Development Group. They'd invested $45,000 in Xavier's fabricated condo project. Second stop, a FedEx location in River North. Midwest Property Trust had paid $38,000 for materials that were never delivered. Their legal department would find the evidence illuminating. Third stop, a post office in Wicker Park. Chicago Real Estate Ventures had advanced $52,000 for construction that never started. Their fraud investigation team would appreciate the detailed timeline. Each package contained the same elements: a cover letter explaining my concerns about potential irregularities, photocopied financial documents showing the discrepancies, and a timeline connecting Xavier's requests to unexplained personal deposits. No accusations, no threats. Just facts laid out with the methodical precision I'd learned in 40 years of business. At each location, I wore different clothes: a baseball cap at the first, reading glasses at the second, a jacket I'd never worn to work at the third. Small details that would blur any potential security camera footage. By 5 p.m., I sat in my office reviewing the day's work. 3 packages in the mail system, each one carrying enough evidence to trigger serious fraud investigations. Tomorrow they'd arrive at corporate headquarters. Wednesday, the investigations would begin. I opened my laptop and created a follow-up schedule. Friday, check public business filings for any signs of criminal charges. Next Monday, research Laura's employer for phase 2 of the plan. The drive home took me past the park where I'd taught Laura to ride a bicycle 35 years ago. Such a bright child, full of promise and dreams. When had ambition turned to entitlement? When had family love become something to exploit? At a traffic light, I checked the rearview mirror and allowed myself a small smile. For the first time in days, I felt like myself again. Not a victim, not a target, but a man who'd built something worth protecting. The radio played news about business fraud investigations making headlines across the city. I turned up the volume slightly, listening to stories of executives facing criminal charges, companies losing their licenses. Soon, there would be one more story to tell. The light turned green, and I drove home to wait for Wednesday. Tuesday morning found me in my home office with a fresh cup of coffee and a manila folder labeled Meridian Marketing. Laura's employer. Phase 2 of the operation required different tactics, more personal intelligence gathering. Robert Chen answered on the second ring. We'd done business together for 20 years, and his commercial real estate firm had connections throughout Chicago's business community. Robert, I need to ask you about something sensitive regarding Meridian Marketing. Sure, Will. What's going on? I chose my words carefully. There might be some irregularities with one of their employees, Laura Tremaine. A pause. Your daughter? Oh, Will. Yes, there have been whispers. The conversation that followed painted a picture I'd hoped never to see. Laura had been borrowing office equipment for months. A desk lamp here, boxes of printer paper there. The company vehicle assigned for client meetings had been spotted at personal real estate viewings across the city. The warehouse supervisor mentioned seeing her load office furniture into her personal car, Robert continued reluctantly. And there are questions about company credit card charges, personal lunches, retail purchases. I wrote down dates and details with the same methodical precision I'd used to document Xavier's fraud. The family disease ran deeper than I'd realized. How much are we talking about? $300, maybe $400 over the past few months. Small amounts, but consistent pattern. Robert's voice carried genuine concern. Will, I hate telling you this. I appreciate your honesty. Any idea about falsified time reports? Overtime claims for company events she skipped. HR noticed the discrepancies but hasn't acted yet. After hanging up, I sat staring at my notes. Petty theft, vehicle misuse, credit card fraud, time theft. Individually small crimes, but together they painted a pattern of entitlement and dishonesty that any HR department would take seriously. The drive to the shopping center took 15 minutes. The payphone outside the grocery store was old but functional, one of the few remaining relics of pre-cell phone communication, perfect for maintaining anonymity. Human resources, this is Jennifer speaking. I'd practiced the voice, slightly higher pitch, generic Midwestern accent that could belong to anyone. I need to report workplace theft and resource misuse. Can you provide specific details in your relationship to the company? I prefer to remain anonymous, but I have dates and documentation. I read from my notes. Office equipment removal on March 15th and April 2nd. Unauthorized vehicle use for personal appointments. Company credit card charges at retail stores, totaling $347. Jennifer's tone shifted to professional concern. These are serious allegations. Can you provide witness information? Check with your warehouse supervisor about furniture removal. Review security footage from the parking garage. The credit card statements will show the pattern clearly. We'll begin an investigation immediately. If you're willing to provide additional information, I hung up before she could finish. Enough evidence planted, enough seeds of doubt sown. HR departments were predictable. They'd start with the easy-to-verify claims and build from there. The drive home took me past Meridian Marketing's office building. Through the glass windows, I could see people working at their desks, unaware that one of their colleagues would soon face a reckoning. At 4:45, I pulled into my driveway and checked my mental timeline. Xavier's investors would start making calls tomorrow. Laura's HR investigation would begin Thursday morning. Both investigations would proceed independently, following their own logical progression toward the same inevitable conclusion. My phone buzzed with a text from Theo. Parents arguing about money again. Dad looks scared. I typed back, "Stay strong, this will pass." But as I walked into my house, I knew it would get much worse before it got better. Thursday afternoon brought the confrontation I'd been expecting. They burst through my unlocked front door at 4:30, Laura's face streaked with mascara, Xavier in a wrinkled suit I'd never seen before. I looked up from the Chicago Tribune business section without surprise. "Good afternoon. How was work today?" "You destroyed our lives." Laura's voice cracked with hysteria. "You told my company lies about me." Xavier positioned himself aggressively near my chair. "Old coward, sabotaging us behind our backs instead of fighting fair." I folded the newspaper with deliberate calm, the business headlines catching the afternoon light streaming through my windows. "I have no idea what you're talking about. The HR investigation, the investor calls, it's all too convenient." Laura paced my living room like a caged animal, her designer clothes wrinkled from 2 days of crisis management. Standing slowly, I felt every year of my age, but also every ounce of my accumulated patience. "Perhaps you should examine your own choices. We'll sue you for defamation. Prove you're behind this." Xavier's face had turned red, spittle forming at the corners of his mouth. I walked to the window overlooking the street where normal people lived, normal lives without conspiracy and betrayal. With what money? And what evidence? "Forget about seeing Theo ever again. We're cutting you off completely." Laura's threat came out shrill, desperate. Turning back to face them, I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Threats now? How predictable. We know it was you. We'll find proof." Xavier stepped closer, his desperation radiating like heat. The power in the room had shifted completely. They'd come here to intimidate, to force an admission, to regain some control over their collapsing world. Instead, they'd found a man who wouldn't be moved by hysteria or threats. I pointed toward the front door, the same gesture I'd used to dismiss Laura after her money demand a week ago. "The exit is where it's always been." "We're not finished," Laura's voice broke completely. "Yes, you are. In every sense that matters." Xavier made one last attempt at intimidation. "This isn't over, old man." I sat back down in my leather chair and opened the newspaper to the sports section. "Good evening." The front door slammed with enough force to rattle the windows. Through the glass, I watched them argue in my driveway, Laura gesticulating wildly while Xavier kicked at my mailbox post. Their voices carried on the spring air, sharp with recrimination and panic. Finally, they got into their car and drove away, leaving angry tire marks on the quiet suburban street. The phone rang almost immediately, a business call about a property deal in Oak Park. Normal commerce continuing while their world burned. "Grayson Real Estate, this is Wilford speaking." Life went on. 1 week later, I sat in my downtown office reading the Chicago Business Journal with my morning coffee. The headline made me smile. "Tremaine Development Faces Fraud Investigation." The article detailed everything with journalistic precision. 3 major investors had filed formal complaints with the Attorney General's office. The FBI had opened a preliminary investigation into alleged irregularities in commercial real estate transactions. Xavier's business assets had been frozen pending the outcome. My phone rang. Robert Chen's voice carried a mixture of sympathy and business pragmatism. "Will, I heard about Laura. Meridian Marketing terminated her yesterday. Pending internal investigation, they said." "These things have a way of working themselves out," I replied, watching downtown Chicago bustle past my office window. Linda knocked and entered with the morning mail. Among the usual business correspondence was a legal notice about Xavier's bankruptcy filing. Chapter 7. Complete Liquidation. His empire of fraud had lasted exactly 1 week under scrutiny. At 2 o'clock, I received a text message from Theo. "Can we meet? Parents don't know I'm texting." Lincoln Park, on a Friday afternoon, was peaceful, almost empty. I sat on our usual bench overlooking the pond, watching ducks paddle in lazy circles. Theo arrived on his bicycle, locking it to the oak tree we'd climbed together when he was younger. "Grandpa, everything's falling apart at home." His 14-year-old face looked older now, marked by the stress of watching adults behave badly. I felt a pang of guilt for what he'd witnessed, but also pride in his moral clarity. "I'm sorry you have to see that, son. Mom cries all the time. Dad screams at bill collectors." Theo sat beside me on the bench, his voice steady but sad. "They keep saying you caused it all. Did you?" The question hung between us like a bridge I had to choose whether to cross. "What do you think happened?" "I think they got what they deserved for trying to hurt you." His answer came without hesitation, this young man who'd risked his parents' anger to warn me about their trap. Eleanor would have been proud of him. Sometimes adults make choices that have consequences. Will they be okay? They'll learn to live within their means. It might be good for them. Theo nodded solemnly. Can I still see you? Nothing will ever change that, Theo. You're the best part of this family. He hugged me then, fierce and quick, before getting back on his bicycle. I watched him ride away, waving goodbye at the park entrance. Sitting alone as evening approached, I thought about Eleanor's voice from that night a week ago. Tough love, Will. Sometimes it's the only love that works. The ducks had settled for the night, the pond reflecting the last light of day. I stood to leave, knowing that justice had been served not through vengeance, but through the simple revelation of truth. The walk home took me through my neighborhood, past Margaret's house where she waved from her garden, past the street where normal families lived, normal lives. My key turned in the front door of my small, practical house. Inside, everything was exactly as it should be. Safe, secure, protected, and mine. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.